Today on the CTV News at 5, gambling has long been big business. Today, a new report with some not-so-surprising results. Plus, what comes next for hundreds of students who received their college diplomas today in the midst of provincial budget cuts. And say it ain't so, the former Alberta finance minister has a three-letter way to curb the deficit that no one wants to hear.
CTV News with Darrell Romuld.
Good afternoon. Some ethically troubling statistics from recent studies on gambling. The research shows that in Canada, between 25 and 50% of gambling revenue comes from problem gamblers, and some of the highest numbers are right here in Alberta. University of Lethbridge researcher Dr. Robert Williams says some of the jurisdictions have taken steps to prevent and reduce gambling addictions, but those measures aren't being implemented in Alberta yet. Terry Vogt reports.
Pulling a $20 bill out of his wallet, Dr. Robert Williams demonstrates how quickly your money can be swallowed up by a VLT machine. Each one of these machines brings in about $150,000 a year, and the lion's share, around 85%, goes to bolster government revenues, helping to pay for health care, education, and other services. But few people ask where the money comes from.
And one of the disturbing statistics from my point of view is that roughly 25% to 50% of all gambling revenue comes from problem gamblers.
Alberta has about 75,000 problem gamblers, those who can't control their urge to the point where it's causing stress on finances, mental health, or relationships. They're part of the 5 to 8% of the population that accounts for 75% of the revenue the government generates through gambling.
People lose their houses, people lose their life savings, and they can do it in a relatively short period of time. If, in fact, half of all the money is coming from addicts, that would be a problematic statistic for a private business, but it's especially problematic for government, whose purpose is to serve the people as opposed to exploit the people.
Many jurisdictions in Europe have established policies or safeguards to identify risky behavior and try and intervene before gambling becomes an addiction or leads to serious problems. Dr. Williams says the Alberta government aspires to reduce the number of problem gamblers, but he's concerned that may be more difficult in light of tight economic times.
You're going to take a revenue hit if you're going to do anything to effectively reduce the prevalence of problem gambling, and in lean economic times, that's a hard sell to governments.
Dr. Williams says the province does have pretty good resources for treating addicts, but he says while treatment is helpful, efforts need to be put in at the front end to prevent the addiction in the first place. Terry Vogt, CTV News, Lethbridge.
Many jurisdictions require people to provide an ID before entering a casino. That helps casinos enforce self-exclusion policies for people who recognize they have a gambling problem. Now in Sweden, they've implemented the use of player cards to track gambling patterns and the frequency of play. Those cards are used to alert people when they've reached gambling levels that they consider risky. Speaking of risky business, the man who staged a death-defying jump from the high-level bridge was back in court today. Johnny Corthius received worldwide attention after making a base jump in January. He has been charged by CP Rail for trespassing under the Railway Safety Act, which could carry a $10,000 fine. Corthius has publicly apologized for the stunt, saying he didn't intentionally break the law and isn't encouraging others to. He has had his court case set over until May 31st. And Dory's here with our first look at weather. Dory, tell me this wind is going to go away.
Well, not tonight and not tomorrow, Darrell. We're going to be stuck with the winds. In fact, tomorrow afternoon, we could see gusts in Lethbridge gusting to 70 kilometers per hour, 90 kilometer per hour gusts expected in the Crow's Nest Pass. But we're still looking at these mild temperatures, and that's part of the reason for the windy conditions. And I'll give you all the details in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Dory. A former Alberta finance minister is saying the unspeakable. He thinks it's about time to talk about a provincial sales tax. Ron Lethbridge says having a PST could help level out peaks and valleys in Alberta's revenue, which is too closely tied, he says, to oil prices. Lethbridge says he believes Albertans want to talk about the options. And it's graduation day for hundreds of students at Lethbridge College. It's their 56th annual spring convocation ceremony, marking the end of college life and the beginning of an exciting future for these graduates. But what is waiting for them in the real world? Jeanette Rocher reports.
A wave of excitement as a sea of black and green adorns the halls of Lethbridge College today. Nearly 700 students graduated from more than 50 of the school's programs.
I feel excited. It's always good to graduate. A little nervous, but otherwise really good.
It's been the best journey ever.
It was incredibly tough.
For many of these graduates, the job market is booming.
There's a lot of opportunity for LPNs. Our scope has really increased, so there's a lot of places we can go. Right now I think there's quite a few jobs available.
Some even have jobs lined up already.
I work for a company called Bridges, and we work with kids with behavioral issues. We just teach them social skills and that.
While others want to continue their academic journey.
I haven't looked at the job market right now. I'm considering going back to school for my degree next year.
And as graduates from business, criminal justice, healthcare, and early childhood education walked across the stage before family and friends, they were handed their diplomas from the college's very first installed president.
Today will be the first time that an installed president actually is conferring those diplomas and degrees on students.
Dr. Paula Burns says every year the stage gets more crowded as the number of graduates increases. And she says there's a reason for that.
We have like an over 95% placement rate for all of our students.
Jeanette Rocher, CTV News, Lethbridge.
Coaldale's mayor says there are challenges ahead for his community. Residents in the town are facing a slight property tax increase. Council passed its new budget, which includes about a $5 a month increase to the average home owner. Utility rates will remain the same. Mayor Kim Craigs does say the increase doesn't help a community that's trying to attract new residents because it's more affordable.
I always liken Coaldale to a middle-income family. You know, they're the families that seem to get hit the hardest all the time. You know, the real rich people seem to be able to take care of themselves and have other resources to fall back on. And so Coaldale's quite like a middle-income family. You know, we get kind of squeezed in the middle sometimes.
Councillors say they're constantly looking for ways to improve on the economy. As more and more information comes to light about the future plans of the suspected Boston Marathon bombers, the surviving brother was moved from hospital room today. Our ABC's Marcia Gonzalez reports.
The surviving suspect in the marathon bombings moved this morning, brought under heavy guard by U.S. Marshals from Beth Israel Medical Center to a federal prison hospital at Fort Devens, about 40 miles west of Boston. The transfer coming after an intense interrogation conducted by the FBI before Jahar Tsarnaev was read his rights, questioning that Congressman Peter King says was cut short.
My understanding was the interrogation was going to last about 48 hours. It was ended by the judge after 16 hours.
But in those hours, the FBI learned of the brothers' last-minute plan to leave Boston Thursday night. The FBI telling New York City Police Commissioner Ray Kelly, Jahar claimed he and his brother intended to drive to Times Square to detonate more bombs.
They discussed this while driving around in the Mercedes SUV that they had hijacked after they shot and killed an MIT police officer in Cambridge.
The victim of that carjacking shared his terrifying story with the Boston Globe. The man, identified only as Danny, saying in the 90 minutes before he was able to escape, the brothers asked if his vehicle could be driven out of state. "What do you mean?" Danny asked. "Like New York," said one of the brothers. At one point, the older brother, Tamerlan, shouted, "Don't look at me. Do you remember my face?" Danny responded, No, I don't remember anything." And of course, the investigation ongoing. The FBI spent much of the day yesterday sifting through a landfill near Jahar's dorm, searching for any receipts or ammunition packaging. Marcia Gonzalez, ABC News, New York.
A rare sight yesterday in Texas. 5 U.S. presidents gathered in Dallas for the opening of the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Tom Walters reports.
It's a rare meeting of a small club. The 5 living men who have been president, here to honor George W. Bush.
There was a time in my life when I wasn't likely to be found at a library, much less found one.
George Sr. and Barbara Bush are the first parents in history to live to see their son get a presidential library. And the last person to get one jokes about the interest they serve.
The eternal struggle of former presidents to rewrite history.
I never wanted to be a wartime president.
While some of the Bush history is still being written,
I wanted to make sure that the economy was strong.
He did not exactly hit that ball out of the park.
President Bush had to make a choice.
But now, in interactive displays, his library invites visitors to make their own decisions about issues he faced. Bush says the hallmark of democracy is the right to disagree.
It's fair to say I created plenty of opportunities to exercise that right.
Today, though, the controversies were left to the past. There is no discord in this club.
Our club's more like a support group.
But then there is a knowledge only they share of what it is for a mortal to hold the job of Titan.
We love this country and we do our best.
From that comes respect and maybe even affection.
He is a good man.
I like President Bush.
In large numbers, Americans did not. Bush left office with one of the lowest approval ratings in history. But recent polls show his image improving with time. And preserving the past is always an expression of hope for the future.
Whatever challenges come before us, I will always believe our nation's best days lie ahead. God bless.
So perhaps do its kindest thoughts of George W. Bush. Tom Walters, CTV News, Los Angeles.
Closer to home, if you've never heard of a tweet or a hashtag, don't worry, you're not alone. Linda Kavanagh is a social media trainer. She spoke yesterday to local home builders at the Coast Hotel about the growing importance of social media in attracting new business and the proper etiquette in doing so. 69% of Canadians say they're connected to social media daily.
It's happened very fast. It's been over the last 5 years that social media has really taken off. And because everybody is on the internet and connected by their iPhones and their tablets and everything like that, it's really important for businesses to be on the cutting edge of social media, because that's the first place people turn when they're looking for anything, is the internet.
And Twitter reports 400 million tweets are sent per day worldwide. Now, Dory's up next with your look at weather. Here now is a look at the way the week closed out.